George Gascón, the district attorney of Los Angeles, has given a teen killer a second chance. Now she's charged again with murder. Let's get into it. Here we go. We talk consistently here on News for Reasonable People about George Soros and his funding of people that he believes to be helping the system. And in reality, it's like this story here. You got a teen killer, somebody who killed somebody, murdered somebody in cold blood, is at it again. And we wonder, could this have been prevented? Could this have been prevented? Well, I'm sure the families of both parties who've been killed are thinking, yeah, probably, right? I mean, whole thing is just nutty. So George Gascón, he's up for re-election. And so if you're an LA resident and you want to just continually have murders go on in your community where they could have been prevented in the legal system, just go ahead and keep voting for a guy like George Gascón. Otherwise, vote for anybody else other than a George Soros-funded individual. Crime Shanice Amanda Dyer committed as a 17-year-old was as horrific as it was seemingly random. She was a documented member of a Crips street gang faction in South L.A., according to appellate records from the case. She wanted to help retaliate for killings by a rival group in August of 2019. How many of these stories are straight up gang related? So many. But you know what we're doing? Don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. Yeah, no, that's off limits. No, because of racism. And meanwhile, people are just being murdered left and right. Targets the gang chose at random were an expectant father, Alfredo Carrera, and his close friend, Jose Antonio Flores Vasquez, an aspiring astrophysicist in UC Irvine's doctorate program, who was visiting Carrera to drop off a baby gift. A car pulled up with Dyer inside. After a brief argument, authorities said, Dyer and two other defendants unleashed a volley of gunfire, killing both men. Third man down the street was wounded in the back as he loaded his 1-year-old daughter into a car seat. Dyer sent text messages taking responsibility for the shooting, saying she was satisfied it made headlines. That is a cold-hearted killer right there. Lock her up. Lock her up for life. I don't care. Hell, Sean, maybe she could be rehabbed. Maybe she took somebody else's life. Life for a life? According to Court of Appeals filing, the documented evidence gathered from her Instagram account. That's how brazen she is. Posting it on the gram. Do it for the gram. Takes on a new meaning when you take somebody else's life and then document it there, doesn't it? Dyer was tried as a juvenile under Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascón, who at the time had a strict policy against prosecuting teens as adults. Hey, if they make adult decisions, I don't care if you think that their brain hasn't developed. They take somebody's life, you got to take them off the streets. I don't really care. You know what I mean? Who at the time had a strict policy against prosecuting teens as adults. She admitted to the murder charges in 2021, and probation records reviewed by the Times show she was released last February. 6 months later, arrested, homicide. This one in Pomona. Dyer's case is one of several in which a defendant to whom Gascón showed leniency has been released only to be accused of another violent crime. Now, with the incumbent district attorney taking heat for progressive policies, so much progress being people being murdered willy-nilly left and right. That is somehow progress in this justice reform lens that just basically empties out the prisons and lets people run around on the street doing this kind of ridiculousness that ends up on Instagram. Yeah. So now with the incumbent district attorney taking heat for progressive policies from his challenger in November's election, the question of how to handle the most violent of juvenile offenders has become a key issue. Lock them up. Yeah. Let them cool their jets until they're like 45. Get them off the street so they don't kill anybody else. Let them cool their jets. If they can convince the court system that down the road they're doing okay. Here's another crazy story. We're going to get back to that one, but check out this one. This one is a real head shaker. Seattle judge releases accused killer 27 hours after a 65-year-old military veteran stabbed to death. I mean, how about that for a headline? I mean, that is just absolutely insane. Seattle. I mean, it's so bad. Gascon Conscience Jimerson, 19, was released on $50,000 bail one day after his arrest. So his family came up with $5,000, and he's out. He's out on the streets after murdering somebody, stabbing them to death. That's what we're doing in the state of Washington. It's okay. I'm sure you're a good person. I'll let you bond out. I mean, yeah, it's not a big deal. I mean, just go about your day. I mean, innocent until proven guilty, right? Innocent until proven guilty is what I always say. And you're like, man, how in the world can you release somebody that admitted it? This kid admitted it. Gascon, Conscience with the K, Jimerson admitted this. Yeah, I did it. It's like, what are you doing besides killing people? Although Gascon's juvenile policy is in line with the broader movement to keep youths out of adult prisons in California. No, I say we throw them back in there. This whole justice reform thing has gone nowhere except sideways. You just got a bunch of criminals running around. Now you got a bunch of criminal aliens running around. I mean, we're proving that. 15,000, another 13,000 murderers, 15,000 rapists. Yeah. Dyer could have faced life in prison for the double murder if her case had not stayed before a juvenile court judge. In the recent case, prosecutors allege that in June, she lured Joshua Streeter, 21, to a Pomona strip mall where he was shot dead. Although not accused of pulling the trigger, Dyer, now 22, is again charged with murder. She's a gangbanger. Put her away. Lock her up. Court records show she has not entered a plea and is due back in court next month. Her attorney declined to comment. When Gascon took office in 2020, he barred prosecutors from charging juveniles as adults under any circumstances, just a blanket approach. And it's some of that type of, without really looking at the circumstances, it's some of that type of approach that I'm a hard no-go on. Hey, you got a killer, you got a cold-hearted killer out there running around, charge him as an adult. Yeah, charge him as an adult. Well, their brains haven't really, citing research on adolescent brain development that shows people do not fully mature until age 25. So what are you going to do? You're going to hold them, wait for trial till 25? I mean, the whole thing is, what is the crime? Oh, they murdered somebody? Send them away. Send them away. Get them off the streets. And if they're part of a gang, get them off the streets. There's one less gang killer out there. Sean, what about reform? Well, if you murder somebody, you kind of give up that right. And if you get out anytime, I'd say you're lucky. I'd say, shouldn't be happening, but Gascn backpedaled on his ban halfway through his term. Yeah, that's maybe not the greatest decision, deciding to allow prosecutors to seek transfers to adult court in some instances. Remember that whole ban thing we did? Well, that resulted in some real shenanigans, and we're rethinking and reimagining that whole, not trying the kiddies in adult court when they murder somebody like an adult. The move came after widespread backlash over the case of Hannah Tubbs, a 26-year-old who was tried in juvenile court for a sexual assault she committed as a teen. Wasn't Hannah Tubbs a transvestite? I think so. Yeah, but had not transitioned. Something along those lines. Charging juveniles as adults requires judicial approval, and the bar tends to be high. 2/3 of attempts to transfer teens to adult court failed last year because we've got this notion that this is what justice reform looks like. And I'm with this next sentence. Harsher punishments for violent teenager offenders should be pursued more aggressively. Absolutely. Absolutely. You wonder why you don't have safety in the community? Well, you defunded the police, and even if you do find somebody and arrest them, if you're not trying them in court and pursuing their, murder charges aggressively, who gets ramrodded in the case? The community. The next person who has their life taken because you were too hell-bent on this whole justice reform thing. Oh, we need to clear out the jails because, we can't have that. I mean, the numbers are staggering. So now you are dealing with that full circle return of, yeah, you know what? I got to admit that maybe this whole thing where you just allow, I don't know, cold-hearted killers to run around on the streets, maybe, just maybe, that isn't the way we should be approaching things. It's that whole notion of the rest of us sit back and go, well, that's a terrible idea right from the get-go. That's a horrible idea. No, you got to go the other way. You got to be putting more people in jail and prisons that actually commit crimes. And you don't let them out because they're just going to do it again like this chick, right? I mean, let's be honest. She's a member of a gang. She's done it once. Now she's done it twice. Here's your sign. What further clearer proof do you need that George Gascón and his policies are they're terrible? So we've got former federal prosecutor Nathan Hochman running to unseat George Gascón in the upcoming election, said his opponent could not have handled the Dyer case any worse. And I 100% agree with him. First of all, he imposed a blanket policy, what we talked about, refusing to transfer any juveniles to criminal court under any circumstances. Just no go. Nope. They're a kid court, no adult for them. He also rejected the recommendation of senior prosecutors who warned that if she were kept in juvenile custody and released in a few years, she very likely would kill again. Huh. Weird. What's this story about? She's involved in a second murder? Okay. All right. What I will do is empower my prosecutors to make the best decisions based on two things: the facts and the law. Unfortunately, the law in this case, the ability for district attorneys to transfer a kid, somebody under 18, to the adult court system, they have to prove that the individual is not worthy. It isn't going to be able to be rehabbed into society. They got to prove that. So it's almost impossible to get a kid in the California court system, even though they're a cold-blooded killer, kicked up to adult court and charged in adult court. So they have this kind of Mickey Mouse shenanigans go on, and then the kid gets out on the streets. She's a cold-blooded killer set free, Cynthia said of Dyer. It's pretty shocking she was able to do it again. This is what comes from the soft on crime laws in Los Angeles. So if you are a Los Angeles resident and you are okay with having criminals running around shooting not only each other, but innocent members of society, if you're okay with that, keep voting for George Gascón because he's your guy. He is your man. Otherwise, probably vote for anybody else. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.